Hello, welcome to the C50 podcast.
Jay, Becca, Bella, and myself all know that mental health is important, and those sitting around this table are either diagnosed with a mental illness or support someone who is.
If you're anything like us, you may be listening to this while you drive, work, clean, or you could be doing many other things. We would encourage you to visit www.c50hope.com, where you can follow up with our podcast and get more help.
We have worked hard to build C50 into a ministry that can reach those affected by someone's struggle with mental health and a deeper illness. We believe that a relationship with Christ is key in finding hope. However, we're not professionals. Think on our words, process them, but never consider us more important than a doctor or therapist you may be working with. We would love to recommend professionals that value all your needs, including medication and therapy, and will also point to Jesus Christ as the center of your life and the way for healing and taking you from hurt to hope.
There are a lot of people that give to C50 that make this all possible. We have people praying, many that give financially, people that donate time or space.
And as an example, we've found a home for the C50 podcast, generously donated for us at McQueen Builders in the South Hills of Pittsburgh, PA. Let's call this McQueen Studios, and this is where we pick up today.
All right, back at McQueen Studios, and we are excited to be back here recording. We've actually done more recording here for upcoming podcasts, and we're actually going back and finishing up a podcast about my story. So we're back here at McQueen Studios and got a cup of coffee, and it's 7 o'clock at night.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an early morning podcast.
Yeah, we're used to the early mornings, but I don't know. I kind of like it late at night.
Yeah,
it's good.
We have good lighting. Okay.
If you say so. All right.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. So this is officially the second half of Jay's story. Right, Jay?
That is.
All right.
It is.
So once again, it's all about Jay.
And once again, that sounds familiar.
Yeah. It was literally on the first podcast.
All right. But for those of you out there that did not hear the first podcast, obviously totally got to go back, check it out. It's on our website. But let's do a little recap. So, Jay, I'm going to try to recap what we heard in the first podcast, but please correct me if I screw something up.
Yeah, and we'll do it quick, because, there's a good chance that somebody, because the way that I'm going to post this, we actually recorded Bella's before this, which will be the third one. So we're going back and recording the second one. So there's a good chance, though, that people will have listened to my first part.
We hope.
Yeah, so, it should be fresh on people's mind, I hope, yeah.
Okay, so you were born in Cedarville, Ohio.
Born in Cedarville, Ohio. There's a big Christian university there called Cedarville University. I'd highly recommend it. And good place. A little small town out in the middle of Ohio.
Yeah, that's what, like 2 hours from Pittsburgh? Because we're in Pittsburgh, for those of you that don't know. But Cedarville's what, like 2 hours from Pittsburgh?
3.5.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
In Ohio, yeah.
Okay, all right, cool. All right, so looking back, Jay, looking back at your life, growing up in Cedarville, as a child, you always felt kind of alone. You had issues maybe with self-worth and how you viewed yourself or how you felt about yourself. Had some trust issues. Does that sound pretty accurate?
Yeah, it did. And, and the reason that I know that is not because I've really worked through, I can say that I've worked through all those. Those were things that are things that in ways I still deal with to this day. But, I can go back very early in my life and go, yeah, I was dealing with trust issues. And I didn't know it at the time, but looking back, I grew up in a very legalistic town, just because of some things there. But, and it's really changed and there's really good people there. But, it's a good place.
Got it. Yep. All right. So then you accepted Jesus about the age of 5 with your mom.
Yeah.
Was it one of the vacation Bible school type, I've accepted Jesus into my heart situations?
Yeah. Honestly, every year that goes by, I forget more about it.
Really?
Yeah. I think that, I think that might be normal, just to.
But really, so you developing a relationship with Jesus, that didn't happen at 5. That happened much later in life.
Right. And I think that happens a lot. Our church, kind of talks about Jesus as your forever friend. And, I don't know how I necessarily feel about that. But, kids when they think about Jesus when they're little, it's it's about Jesus is good and he's a good guy, and he pays for all your bad things that you do. It's sort of a different
Right. Got it.
thing. So yeah, the relationship came a little bit later.
So you grew up in a Christian home, accepted Jesus at the age of 5. You were involved in the youth group in high school, and you really loved the fellowship and the friends that you had in youth group.
Yeah, I just heard this at church, and they said it was something like fellowship before Jesus, and I could totally relate to that because there was a girl named Jenny Howard that I don't know if she invited me, but she played soccer with me during an overnight for New Year's.
A retreat? Oh,
yeah,
okay.
like when you do like an all-nighter, and we played soccer all night, and I just remember being in this stage of drugs and all sorts of things, and I was just like, this girl is playing soccer with me, like she's being nice to me, and then the whole youth group would purposefully be nice to me because of a guy named Nathan Chambers.
Okay.
They would all be nice to me, and
So you're saying they were forced to be nice to you?
no, they weren't forced. No, Nathan Chambers encouraged everyone
To be nice to each other.
to be nice to me.
Oh.
That literally, it was part of the game plan of let's get Jay back to church.
Oh, okay.
And so
Got it.
and then I got into fellowship with them, made some really good friends and whatnot. And so let's do this, Bella. Let's put you on the spot.
Okay.
Have you found, from a perspective of someone who is 17 and in high school, do you share any of that? I mean, does fellowship before Jesus make sense to you, or can you attest to fellowship being crucial in high school?
Yeah, definitely. Because a lot of kids in high school sometimes don't grow up in a Christian home where they go to church every single Sunday. Like their parents say, all right, we're going to youth group on Wednesdays. So a lot of kids that go to our youth group were invited by friends. And then when they come, they see the environment and they see how awesome it is and how great people are. Yeah. So fellowship, I feel like coming into a church as someone who doesn't grow up going to church is a huge thing.
I think for a lot of people, it makes them feel like they have a place where they belong and a place where they can go and feel comfortable and truly be themselves.
Yeah.
And maybe because a lot of times kids today, with how they are in school and how school is, I think sometimes they feel like they have to be a certain way at school, where when they come to church or youth group,
They can take off that mask.
Correct. They can totally be themselves, which is awesome. So getting back to you, though, Jay. So jumping ahead just a little bit. So high school was awesome. You loved youth group. We go off to college, right?
Yep.
And college is when you really started to notice some things going on. You started to compartmentalize parts of your life. So looking back, you had some bipolar episodes. And you were still filled with Christ in your heart, but how you felt about Christ in your heart and loving him. But in your mind, it was different?
Yeah. The way that I would explain that is just that I had a heart for Jesus Christ, but everything in my mind, those two things didn't connect.
Got it. There was a big disconnect.
There's a big disconnect. Yeah. I mean, there's sort of it's not like I really want to blame mental illness and say it was mental illness, but there was just so much going on in my head that it didn't match up with my heart, and compartmentalizing. By this time, I had gotten close to Jesus Christ, but I didn't know how to reconcile my mind and my struggles in what would later become known as mental illness in my life with my passion for Jesus Christ. So I compartmentalized things, and I sort of lived life in different ways when I was around different people and situations. And that started in college.
Got it. So then from there, you went off. You got a job at a mega church in Cincinnati. Now, how far is Cincinnati from Cedarville?
Hour.
Oh, all right. So you were kind of close to your family.
Yep.
All right, cool. So it was a great place. It was a good place to work. But at this point, you weren't diagnosed yet, which is just crazy to me that you've kind of been going on your life for this long and you still haven't been diagnosed.
Well, and that's the Bella thing. Bella is 17 and has spent
5 years.
5 years. Has spent 5 years, addressing this issue of mental illness.
Right.
And for me, it was 24.
Right.
When I'm working at a mega church as a youth pastor, and the whole deal, just to get through it, a complicated, heavy, just terrible situation very quickly is, I would say that there were areas of my life that I compartmentalized that were just sinful and were wrong, very damaging to the relationships around me, specifically Becca. And I mean, that's going to be, I don't know when we should really get into the depth of those things or if we should or not, but Becca's right across the table from me. And in 2007, when I was at this mega church, I loved Jesus, but I had a whole separate life that was maybe tied into the manic and the depressive and all that kind of stuff, and borderline personality disorder. But there's no excuses for the way that I was living my life and the things I was doing.
So you were a youth pastor then when you were at this church?
Yeah.
Okay, so you were a youth pastor, heart for God, loved God, but you had all of this. That had to be such an internal struggle. I can't even imagine.
Go ahead.
I can't imagine either, like what you just said, because I feel like pastors sometimes feel like they have to have that image of like the perfect person where they can't struggle, and they always have to be the person shedding the light of Jesus, and they can't ever be up on stage and just be like, listen, I'm not in a good spot right now. So I can't imagine going through all that and still having to put on a brave face for kids.
And Bella, as your former youth pastor and somebody who the image of youth pastor deteriorates week by week as we do this of me. But when I was at the Bible chapel, yeah, like I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
When I was at Cincinnati, I loved Jesus, but there was more of a sort of a separate lifestyle living, It wasn't as much of a battle that I felt at the Bible chapel.
Yeah.
And hiding. It was just more of like, dude, you are doing some things that are whacked out,
Now, do you think that's because you weren't diagnosed yet and you weren't really coming to terms with what was going on?
Well, I mean, that might be, you know, but I think Beck and I have taken, and you're awfully quiet, but I think Beck and I have talked about this, and you have to take responsibility for the things that you do, even when you're manic, Like, I can't just say, well, I was manic, so everything that I did to hurt you,
just blame it on that.
Blame it on that.
You can't,
And Bella, we're sitting at this table as the diagnosed, right?
Yeah.
And we were talking about, which this is the second. So in the next episode, you'll hear Bella talk about some of the things that you've dealt with. And, when you have a panic attack, I mean, you got to own it. You can't just blame it on the panic attack,
Like, I know it was me.
Right.
Even, like, I can't blame it on the fact that I was panicking in the moment. Like, you can still... It's still you.
Right.
So I understand completely.
But, I mean, I was undiagnosed, and then after all this that went down at the church, which is just a longer story, and Becca and I have really decided that I think we're going to try to be careful about what we go into. But in that really low point of our lives is when I was diagnosed with bipolar and borderline personality disorder.
Got it. And that's when you were still in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Okay. So you were in Cincinnati, diagnosed, started therapy, got on medication. So I'm assuming because you had all those good things starting to happen in your life, you started to come out of it a little bit. Not come out of it a little bit, but get to a better spot.
Yeah. It took a while. And I got a job, just a simple job that, I like in a way that you're kind of overqualified for. But, it was just a 9 to 5 and made money, and I just did my thing. And the thing that I focused on was Jesus Christ. And I probably healed more than Becca. When we get to Becca's story,
right,
that'll be interesting to hear you talk about that,
Yeah.
I can't wait to hear your whole side of everything.
Because a lot of the things that I did hurt her, but she didn't deal with that, which is part of the story here. She didn't deal with that too much later. in a real authentic way, you know.
Yeah, and back in 2007, I saw the symptoms even before I knew about the extremely dysfunctional things that were going on. I saw the depression. There was a brokenness between us, but we didn't know about the mental health side. And then as soon as you were diagnosed and we had support from the psychologist and psychiatrist, then the focus was on medication, and I didn't address the things that were going on in my heart and understanding how codependency related to that, which we'll talk about that more when we talk about my story in a little bit later on. But that's where I was.
Right. And I'm just looking at the ticker. And so I'm just going to quickly just kind of buzz through this because, so Becca was like kind of on her own journey. And so that's why we're going to share her story. Becca has the perspective as a support team member for me and also her own story of codependency. So Becca has a really cool story. Well, you know, whatever. It's a really interesting story. So it's not cool, but it's not cool in any way, but it's an interesting story. And we'll get to Becca. But anyway, so
jumping ahead, you ended up at the Bible Chapel. Got a job there.
I mean, I got better in a lot of different ways, and just slowly. And I went out to Colorado and for a little while with some great people out there, and then ended up in
Pittsburgh.
The Commonwealth.
Who calls it I don't call it the Commonwealth.
The Keystone State.
It's Pittsburgh.
It's a Commonwealth. It's not even a state. It's a Commonwealth. Did you know that?
But I've never said that.
Yeah.
I've never said that. So, all right, Jay. So you ended up in the Commonwealth. You're at the Bible Chapel.
Yeah.
You took a position as a youth pastor at the Bible Chapel. And then you were at the Bible Chapel for 5 years?
Correct. 5 years.
Yeah. So we're jumping to what? Maybe 2016 at this point?
2012 I was at the Bible Chapel.
Right, but 2016 is when you left the Bible Chapel.
Yeah. So I was there for 5 years, and I've always told people that the first 3 years were a lot better than the last 2 years.
Okay.
And when I say that, I always feel bad because I got someone sitting right here to my left that was absolutely wonderful. You know,
right.
in
but
those last years. But she got you
in those dark 2 years.
Yeah. But I mean, it's not like I didn't like the kids or the people or anything like that. It was just what was really happening is there was two things happening. My mental health was sort of on a spiral, and I think God was really, I don't know if it was like working together, but like looking back, I see that God had a hand in a lot of different things, and He was leading me out of youth ministry. I was just feeling disconnected, and it just wasn't
well, He's probably leading you down the path saying, okay, Jay, it's time for you to really like take care of yourself. Let's get yourself on track.
Yeah. So I felt like God was really calling me away from youth ministry, and I had this really cool opportunity to get into missions. But the whole thing about the Bible Chapel, I love the Bible Chapel. I love Ron Moore. I love everything about it. We still go there, which is usually people that leave churches, like pastors and whatnot, don't stay at the church that they were working at,
But you're still there.
But we're still there, and
we
love it, and we have such good relationships, which is really a testament to the people there. They've been good to us. Love it. Okay, so anyway, said enough good things. But so, hey, guess what? I love the Bible Chapel. Okay. But one of the things is that in the church, and it wasn't necessarily the Bible Chapel, because I always felt like this in every church I was working in, and it wasn't because it wasn't because like the vibe I got from people. I think in all my years working in a church, I had one comment from a person in over me.
So one
negative comment
in 5 years, or
in
just
10 years,
in any time
in 10
ministry.
years of being in youth ministry.
That's actually pretty awesome.
I've had only one negative comment. So out of 10 years of ministry, there was only one time that I got like a negative comment, but still I felt like I had to hide my illness and the things I was struggling with. And I tried really, really hard to keep it together at the Bible Chapel, but I wasn't really good at it. But, if I stand up in front of the church, literally in front of the church, and share about following hard after Jesus and don't go home and live that in front of my wife and kids, then there's a problem. There's a problem.
I also feel like we said earlier, like you were in a position over kids, and I personally used to feel this way, and I still think that some kids feel this way when it comes to mental illness, that there's such a stigma when it comes to mental illness in the church. And I think that if kids feel that way, sharing what they're going through because they don't want to be made fun of or embarrassed or have comments to them, I can imagine it being you being the person in charge of all that and feeling that as well.
Right. I mean, who wants to hear, hey, I'm the youth pastor at the Bible chapel of 4,000 people, and I'm depressed.
Right.
I feel manic. You know, I mean, nobody, you can't say that. You know, the Bible chapel is, however good they are, they just don't want their pastor saying that, you know? And so there's just like, it is what it is, you know?
And for you to, I would think, for you to really be well and truly heal, you had to separate yourself from that. I mean, how could you keep living two lives like that?
Absolutely. I mean, God brought me to a spot of where I am today, and it only happened through leaving the Bible chapel, not because people that did me wrong or anything,
right?
But because I needed to change, and
we had things between us that we needed to work through and deal with. That so that was another layer,
which ties, and this kind of comes back and it ties into Becca's story, and when Becca starts to work on herself, and so.
Because that was happening then.
And let's just jump to that, because I might be off this, Karen. We're kind of going by an outline tonight just to make sure that we hit everything. But
you transitioned to Heaven's Family then at this point.
I transitioned to Heaven's Family, and that was 2017. In 2016, a year before that, Becca slowly started to realize she needed to change. And so, Becca, if you can tell us very quickly, what does it mean when a codependent person, I'm gonna mess this up, but like when someone that's codependent starts drawing lines, what happens?
Yeah, I didn't even really understand what codependency was until I read a Henry Cloud book. And there was a quote that resonated with me that was, she's kept someone happy but lost her own way. And I didn't even know what that meant for me. I just knew that I resonated with that. So I read that book in August of 2016. And I started working on my codependency, which for me, that meant drawing lines about what I would accept and handling dysfunction in a different way. Instead of catering to it, I would withdraw from it. And just being honest with you, I realized within codependency, there's a lot of dishonesty where you smile when you feel like crying, where you say yes when you mean no. And so working through that really began for me in August of 2016 and then really came to a head in the spring of 2018. But I think, to answer your question, when one person starts to recover, whether it's someone who has a behavioral type addiction or tendency, or chemical for that matter, or the other piece of the puzzle who struggles with codependency and codependent tendencies, when one of them recovers, the other person normally doesn't respond well. They're not used to hearing no, or they're not used to not being catered to. So we were at the beginning of that journey in 2016, transitioning to 2017.
So if I'm understanding correctly, so then for all the years that you and Jay were together.
Yes.
You basically, your life's goal, if you will, was just to make Jay happy.
Yes.
Please Jay and just fix
That's why when you say it's all about Jay, she goes, yeah, been there.
So just help him to be happy. So your life was all about making him okay.
Yes, and shaping into whatever shape necessary in order to make Jay okay. I was used to transitioning myself to fit whatever mold was needed in order for him to be okay throughout his lows of his depression or highs of manic. And we didn't know that for the first few years of our marriage, but that was just my tendency, and that was all wrapped up within my codependency.
Right. So then I can't even imagine Jay. So for all these years, I mean, Becca was her right. And then all of a sudden one day she's like, done with that, you know?
Yeah, I actually had a breakdown basically in August of 2016.
Yeah.
And we can get into this more when it's my story. But Jay, I went to my sister's, and when I came home, you were calling it my midlife crisis and waiting for it to pass. And it wasn't passing. You're not laughing quite as hard as me.
That's
right
funny.
now.
But in the end, she was obviously, by helping herself, she was ultimately also helping you.
And I was used to controlling outcomes at the time. So for me to help myself, not knowing how Jay was going to respond or if it was going to help him, I just knew I had to do the next right thing right in front of me, one thing at a time. And then in the end, I'm thankful that it has strengthened our marriage and helped Jay.
So then when she first put up this, put the line in the sand type thing, you didn't respond well then. You had a hard time.
Okay, so yeah, and to move us along, I'll just say that it was incredibly difficult for me.
I can imagine,
because Becca catered to me. And so when somebody goes, no,
You're like, what?
That's exactly what I was.
What do you mean no?
What are you talking about? No. What do you mean? And so it was very difficult. In fact, in 2017, people go to the psych ward for all sorts of things, and we're keeping some of our story to ourselves. But I was in the psych ward for it.
Okay.
Becca was bringing up things, doing things, talking about things that were very healthy for her, things that she should be doing. Because, as a codependent person, she would be tempted to, Jay's freaking out, And I think that first time in 2017, I don't really want to get into it right now, but in 2017, Becca, after getting out of the psych ward, she was like, I'm just going to make Jay happy. And so she was still struggling with that because she knew that I was struggling with her changes.
Right.
But she was still wanting to
make it all better.
Right. And so
what
what happened was, and I'm just going to jump ahead right here to March 15, 2018, I just thought, you know what? It'd probably be better if I was out of the picture on March 15th.
Got it.
That's when I went to the psych ward for
So that was your second
5
time
days.
then.
Second time.
Okay.
It was March 15th, 2018. And was there for 5 days. And I came home. I don't know if you left me a note or something. I think I came home to a note that said, go live in Ohio with your parents until you're better.
She said, "You's got to go."
Yeah. Yeah. It might have sounded real pretty, but that's what she was saying.
Well, I actually wasn't telling you where to live. It was just, I don't feel
You just can't stay
safe
here.
for you to be home right now.
Well, you have kids.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And so it's, we could totally get into it and it'd make a lot more sense. But,
So you went to Ohio then?
So I went to Ohio
Yeah.
and I stayed out there for 6 weeks, and I was on my own emotional roller coaster. Didn't get a lot of help. I had one phone or internet counseling with some lady in Virginia, and that was weird. And then I met with this guy named Dave. I'm not going to use his last name, but I met with this guy named Dave 2 times, and he was really helpful. He was a Christian guy. He was really helpful, but here is what happened. My life hit an all-time low March 15th, 2018. Went to the psych ward, went to live in Ohio for 6 weeks. And after about 6 weeks, a family member of mine committed suicide.
Wow.
And we went down. So I told Becca, she's like, I want to be there. I want to reach out to his wife. She knew that it's gonna be hard on me too. I think there's a little bit of like sort of like this is a big thing, right?
Yeah.
So Becca wants to be involved,
Right.
and so she comes out to Ohio, and we go down, and I remember walking into the house, and I saw his shoes, his brown shoes.
So you went to his house.
His house.
Okay. And you saw his shoes. All right.
And
His wife's
I-
there.
yeah,
Their
and
children. Yes.
and so we're kind of keeping this details kind of out of it. So I'm hoping that people get the story even without these details. But I go there, I see the kids and his wife and his shoes,
Yeah.
and it was so impactful on me. Now we don't know if he had mental illness or anything like that. Like
So you don't know the why.
we don't know the why.
Okay.
And it can be many things.
Right.
We don't know.
Right.
And we'll never know because, just unfortunately, we won't know. So I'm not making any insinuations, if that's the right word, like
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah. So I'm not doing that. But I looked at his shoes, and I looked at his kids, and I looked at his wife, and I just thought, my decisions, whether they're mental illness or not, my decisions can impact the people forever.
People that you love the most.
People that you love the most.
Right.
When you think about your kids and your wife from the opposite
From their perspective, correct.
From their
yes.
perspective, that was the first time I ever thought about mental illness from someone else's perspective.
Because you're so wrapped up in it, in yourself. Like, it's always like me, how I feel. But you never think about anybody else.
Okay, so Bella, I'm going to put you on the spot because I want to keep hearing from you.
Okay.
And if you can't answer, just think about it. We'll come back to it.
Okay.
But can you relate to that? Has there ever been a time that you have seen somebody else with a panic disorder, seen somebody else with a mental illness, seen yourself, heard about your situation from your mom and gone, oh my goodness, like this is...
Yeah, I've definitely, not necessarily mental illness, but something happened at our school, and I saw how it affected our school back when I was in 7th grade. And I was diagnosed in 6th grade, so this happened a year later. So I saw how it affected our school. Mm-hmm. And then also back when I was struggling in 6th grade, like my dad would sit me down and be like, listen, Bella, I get that you're struggling. I get that you're in a panic attack when you say different things that you say, but it's not all about you right now. And you have to realize that this is affecting everyone else in our family and not just you.
Oh.
And I was like, oh gosh. Because like you almost feel like he didn't mean it for me to feel guilty.
Yeah.
But it's like I was being mean. I was being selfish. And
yeah.
When you have a family and you're struggling with something as difficult as mental illness, it doesn't just affect you. It affects everyone that loves you and around you. And I didn't realize that.
And he was speaking honestly to you about that.
Yeah. And this was just an honest situation. It was like, mental health or not, Jay, you out of the picture is a big decision that would have impacted a lot of people. And so I was just like, I got to do something about it. It was the first time I thought about it. I had gone to counseling. I've been to so much therapy, you name it. I've said it all, and nothing impacted me more than
that was
that
your second
moment.
light switch. Your first light switch was with your therapist that says you need to own up to this, right? You need to tell your boss what's going on, right?
Yeah.
That was like your and this was almost like your second one.
Well,
like,
this is what I call, I've had moments in my life that, like we were talking about earlier, like rebirth, kind of like a new start. May 1st, 2018 was that day that I looked at Becca and I was just like, wow, like our relationship is not like a lead ball. It's like a glass ball.
right.
It's delicate. These decisions that I'm making are crazy. And long story short, I things started to change, and I came back to Pittsburgh and came back home and saw the kids and Becca, and we slowly started to get back to a little bit of normalcy. And I still go to therapy 2 times a week. Now this is really interesting. What day is it today?
Monday.
February 18th.
It's Monday.
Okay. So it's literally February 18th, Monday. And today I was with my therapist and had a breakthrough on one of the biggest things in my life. And she said, Jay, what's it like to feel normal? You know?
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
And I was like, is it one of the things? And I was just
You're like, wait, am
and
I
was
normal
like,
right now?
Yeah, I was like, so this is what normal feels like, you know?
Seriously.
So I mean, it has taken a long time, and literally, I mean, we've already started C50. We've been growing, and I've sure found a lot of health. I mean, Becca have gotten to a really good place. You know, always working on a relationship, and we have so much work to do, and so much more work to do. But you know, Becca and I are in a good spot, but still, you know, it's still just today. Welcome to normalcy, you know.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
It's awesome, though.
Yeah, let's back up though. So how C50? Why C50?
yeah. That's yeah. So C50, I knew. Okay, so here's the deal. I was working for Heaven's Family. I was working for Heaven's Family, and the travel. I was going around the world and going to crazy places, and the travel and being away from family and my medication and where I was. This was before the whole situation in March and April, and so I've been working for them for about a year and a half or a year and a couple months, and then I just knew that I had to stop. You know, Heaven's Family. If you know anything about them, they're phenomenal people, and I can't say enough good things about them. I love what they do. They're given to kids in Africa. They're given to missionaries. They're clean water, food. There's hardly anything that's more important than that. But what I realized the other day, as I started to think about how I could help Heaven's Family still, is I said the thing that Heaven's Family has in common with C50, and we're talking about Americans mainly in America, or we're talking about Christians mainly in America,
Right.
And they're talking about people that are Christians in Africa and all over the world, and you know, I mean, everywhere. What do we have in common with a food program in Nairobi? We have Jesus, you know, a story of redemption, of almost losing a marriage with me and Becca, or thinking I'm better off, or people around me are better off with me out of the picture.
Right.
Getting to when God can redeem that's the same thing as giving a kid a bowl of food. You know, it's the love of Jesus Christ. It's the redeeming part of Jesus Christ. And so C50, I mean, that's what I want people to know about C50 is, I mean, that's what we're about. We're about the redeeming aspects of Jesus Christ. And we're going to be talking a lot about mental illness. And that's one of the things I felt like originally God was calling us to. But as we developed it, we thought, you know what? It's mental health, and it's people's stories that are so difficult. And we're going to talk about them, talk about how people handled them, the rough parts of them. I really want to get into the dirt and the hard times that things like me and Becca have been through, or other people have been through, and say, man, God can redeem that story.
It's amazing, I think, sometimes, and with all the stories that we're going to hear, a lot of people, whenever they say they get through that difficult time or they get through that rough patch, and then they look back and they can see how God was working through that entire situation. But I think what is amazing, and which is unbelievably beautiful, is when you're in that moment, and you can see God working while you are in that moment. I mean, there's nothing like it. There's absolutely nothing like it. But that can be hard. That can be hard. But I'm excited for everybody out there to hear all the different people that are going to come on and share their stories and share how Christ has helped them and work through their lives. And it's just going to be awesome.
Yeah. And, you know, I'm just going to back up, and I could almost close with that, right? Like, you're nailing it. And maybe we will, but I'll back up and say the C50 thing was a really cool thing, and just because I think people are like, you know, what is C50? I'll just explain it real quick. But real quick, or very soon after I felt God was calling me to this ministry, something was going through my head where Dolores, the singer of the Cranberries, this band from the 90s, I guess they did stuff in the thousands, but
I don't think you've ever heard of them, have you, Bella?
Nope.
what?
We're showing our age.
Yeah. So the Cranberries gal, Dolores, I was never like a super big fan or anything.
Yeah.
But the one thing I knew about her is that she had bipolar. And
Then, yeah.
she
You're
had-
like, oh my gosh, we have something in
I
common.
know. I'm like, oh, it's so cool. You know, like, she's bipolar. I'm bipolar, and she had like some freak outs, and I'm thinking,
Right.
yeah, I get it. You know, it's so cool. You know, and then in I think it's January. I think it was January. She overdosed,
Okay.
and so there was speculation that it was suicide, and then I think maybe the report came out that it was accidental or something. But anyway, she was medicating a part of her life,
Right.
You know, and I knew that she struggled with mental illness, and
Yeah.
so there was just so much that I related to. And the thing that she said was really interesting, and I don't have this. I should really learn this quote because it's such an important part of C50. But she said something like, I'm 43, and if I see 50, I'll be happy. Something like that.
Right.
Like, if I see 50, I'll be fine, or something. I'll be happy, I'll be fine. And so I thought, man, that's really interesting, because when I was in college, I said the same thing. I said, if I reach the age of 50, I'll be happy.
You had told me that a couple times, that you didn't think that you would reach the age of 50.
Yeah, and that's a horrible thing to tell your wife, you know. But
Right.
That's a heavy weight. Yeah.
it's a heavy weight, you know. But I just never thought it would. So, and then I learned that she said the same
Same
thing.
thing.
And whether or not she committed suicide is whatever, but she was medicating something, and, you know, she was in a spot where that happened. It just sucks, you know. It was horrible. So I was thinking about calling it SEE50, C50, see, like age 50. And it wasn't representative of an age, because it's timeless. It's just, I want to see the future,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
Right.
And so we're not a rehabilitation organization, but, you know, it could be anything. You know, if you got bipolar, it could be, I just want to see healthy relationships, or borderline, I want to see healthy relationships and whatnot. And so it's just like, it's like goals. Mm-hmm. And so that's where
But you don't, it's not SEE.
it's, C, thank you. And
Yeah.
so C is for this family member who committed suicide. Their name started with a C, and
Which I think is awesome that you incorporated that into the name. When I first heard about that, I really, really liked it because this is so important, and to bring him into that is, I don't know, like you have no words to describe that. Like, it's so cool.
I appreciate that. I think that's really cool that you caught that, Bella. And it's almost like I just wish that, like, if you could kind of take everything that comes from C50, you want to say, okay, cool, give it to the Lord and give credit to the Lord and praise the Lord and all that stuff. But I almost want to say in the same way, I just want to kind of bring this family member and say, dude, this sucks, and I would do anything to have you back.
Right.
But let's use the impact that it made on me, and how other people through mental illness, and again, he might not have had that, but other people that can relate to those feelings, we can take that and use it for good, you know? And like, so maybe like in a little way, that crappy situation can do something good for somebody, and maybe
Possibly save a life.
maybe save a life. Yeah, I was just gonna say that.
Which is, like, again, I have no words. Like, that's so incredible.
Yeah, or draw someone to Jesus,
Yeah.
you know? And my family member was a believer, you know?
Oh, awesome.
And so, I mean, that's awesome. And, you know, I know that he's in heaven. But how cool would it be? Like, Bella, you're right. Like, what if it saved a life? Like C50 saves, helps somebody.
Or even just give somebody the courage and the strength to go talk to their mom, their dad, their friend, their teacher, their spouse, and say, you know what? Just give somebody the courage to speak.
Yeah, or someone comes to this place of redemption,
right, and
shares their story, and someone goes, I want that. In a small way, to me, I go, thank you to my family member. Like, your situation that sucks, God's redeeming that in some crazy way, right?
Right.
Like beauty from ashes, just the most devastating situation that I can hardly get the words off of my tongue in thinking about his wife and children. But that somehow there's a glimpse of beauty from the devastating ashes of their reality right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, Jay, I have two more things for you before we end this podcast. I just want you to tell people where they can get in contact with us.
So there's two ways that you can contact us. The first way is through a general contact page on the website, and the website is C50hope.com. That's the letter C, 50hope.com, C50hope.com. And at the top of the page, you will see a contact link, and that'll drop down into a little box, and you can tell us how you're feeling, and if you have any questions that maybe our stories have kind of brought up in your life, and if you want to know more about Jesus Christ or anything like that, we would love to share our story with you, and we can go a little bit deeper too when we're outside of a podcast. The second way is a page that we have on the C50hope.com web page that is designed for hearing your stories. And so when we get these podcasts out there, we understand that there's going to be people all over the United States, all over the world, that are going to tune in and hear this, and they're either going to connect with it some way, and you might have your own story of redemption, and we would love to hear that. So there's a kind of a section of your story and sharing your story and getting to a place of redemption. And who knows, you might even be on the podcast. We don't even need you in this room. We have a telephone hooked up, and so we can do some interviews, which we'll be doing in the future as well. But you can share your story of redemption, and we'd love to contact you.
And lastly, I was wondering where you're at with Jesus right now.
Well, I'm glad that I can end with that, because, we've talked a lot about some things that are heavy, and I always want to draw attention to the Lord. And the thing about C50 too is, I was thinking about this, Karen, when you say a purpose.
Finding purpose in your pain.
Finding purpose in your pain. I put these two things together because on our website we have Hurt to Hope.
Right. And
that's one of the things that we really felt like we really wanted to be. And the reason why we want to do Hurt to Hope is because hope, you can find hope in the midst of your problems.
In the midst of your struggle, right?
Right.
In your pain.
Right.
And so it's not like it's hurt. We didn't want to do like hurt to perfect. It's like hurt. It's hurt to hope, because hope can transcend problems, or when things do get better, But then, I was kind of like word playing today, and I thought it's kind of like hurt to hope, and then you move to purpose. What did you just say?
Finding purpose in your pain.
Finding purpose in your pain.
Right.
It's almost like finding purpose in your pain is the next step, where you're like, okay, I found redemption. Now, like, can God use it?
Right. Right.
And so, yeah, that's really cool. But I always want to give God the credit to my story, even when I'm struggling. So today it was really cool, because my therapist was like, how's it feel to be normal? I'm like, wow. like
Praise God.
yeah, like I'm feeling pretty good right now. But at the same time, if I'm feeling really bad, I still want to go, hey, you know what? I still call upon the name of the Lord.
Right.
And
You still give thanks.
still give thanks.
Yeah.
And it's really hard and
Yes.
it sucks sometimes, but that's what I want to do. So today, to answer your question, Bella, I think I just picked out some words that meant a lot to me where I'm at right now. And this is not to say that I'm not going to have bad days and weeks and whatever ahead of us or ahead of me. But I just said reborn, calm, peace, honest, and I put in love because I just put in love with Becca and in love with Jesus Christ.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I don't know. Like I'm at a really kind of like, it's very weird to me. I just feel
Normal.
normal.
I think it's a place of growth too, and it makes me think of the verse from James. Count it all joy, brothers, when you face trials of many kinds, because the testing of your faith develops perseverance. And I forget
And
exactly.
perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything.
Yes. So I think
We're a team.
there you go.
Thanks for listening today. Again, we have tried hard to share truth authentically, and we hope that this has been a helpful time in your life. To reach us, donate, share your story, and give us feedback on how we can do a better job reaching people that are struggling. Please go to www.c50hope.com.
We leave you with this. Now the Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. 2 Corinthians 3:17. And remember, as Jack Miller said, you're far more loved than you ever dare imagine.